DiMasi. It appeared he could be released from prison soon. Today, the judge slowed things down a bit. Last week, the Federal Bureau of Prisons filed a motion with the blessing of U.S. Attorney Carmen Ortiz requesting a so-called compassionate release from federal prison for Sal DiMasi. Compassionate release is meant for inmates who are elderly, extremely sick. DiMasi has served 5 years out of an 8-year term for taking a kickback on a state contract. But while in prison, he has been diagnosed with cancer of both the tongue and prostate. For a time, the 71-year-old was unable to eat and relied on a feeding tube. Today, federal judge Mark Wolf issued a ruling. He expressed concern that compassionate release requests had been filed only 24 times a year on average between 1992 and 2012 and demanded evidence that DiMasi's petition was not the result of political connections he cultivated on Beacon Hill over the years. A hearing has now been scheduled for November 1st. Joining me for a first interview since these developments broke is Deborah DiMasi, the wife of the former speaker, now become an advocate for all critically ill inmates. Good to see you, Debbie.
Good to see you,
John Reinstein, one of the attorneys working on the case for the DiMasi family. John, it's good to see you, too. When you first heard about this Bureau of Prisons and Carmen Ortiz agreeing to file this motion, I assume you contacted your husband?
I had to wait for him to contact me.
And what was that conversation like?
It was very special. He was very shocked.
What did he say to you?
No, honey.
What did you feel when you've been at this a long time. What did you feel when you first heard that they were filing this motion?
I was, this has been going on for so long, and it's a very surreal thing to go through, and very hard to believe that it is something that could be possible. So I'm still there, and cautiously optimistic, but that's hard to sink in.
Is he still there? What's his state of mind?
He knows to be cautiously optimistic.
Can we get to what Mark Wolf did here, John? He could have granted this without a hearing if he chose, correct?
He has the authority to do that, yes.
Okay. And he asked for more medical information, but that sounds to me like a housekeeping thing. You just have to provide affidavits or something about the former speaker's condition, right?
He said there was nothing on the record that established that Sal was as sick as the motion says he is, and he wants an affidavit to cover that. Exactly right. That's housekeeping. But beyond that, what he said in the order that he issued today was that under the sentencing guidelines, he has to go back and consider whether release is nevertheless appropriate.
And one of the criteria is he's citing this data that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the few number of compassionate release requests, and he goes on to say, if accurate, meaning the data is accurate, these statistics raise the question, which is only a question, Mark Wolf says, of whether the director's decision to file the motion was influenced by DiMasi's former status as Speaker of the Massachusetts House of Representatives and the stature of some who may be advocating for his release. What's your answer to that?
Well, they weren't referring to me as the stature.
No, we've had people here, like from the Attorney General, who has said on this stage he should get compassionate release. Michael Capuano, the congressperson. Bob DeLeo, one of his successors. I mean, a whole succession of very powerful people have said, yes, it is time.
I understand. There are really two responses to that, Jim. The first is that the Bureau of Prisons has been very slow, very, very slow to move on the issue of compassionate relief, and has been extensively criticized, particularly in the various reports of the Office of the Inspector General. Mm-hmm. They haven't even been applying the authority that they already had, and that's what that report made clear. We hope this is a beginning. They've been under pressure to do better than they've done, and we hope they're going to do it.
But can you say in this case with certainty that the reason they filed the request on Sal DiMasi's behalf was not because of his status and the stature of the men and women who support this? Can you say that with certainty?
I can't. I'm not privy to what went on inside the Bureau of Prisons, but I will tell you this: the Bureau of Prisons is not particularly sensitive to outside pressure. If anything, we would be concerned that Sal's status would have been negative, would have hurt him, that they would have been more cautious in considering his request for release.
So I'm sorry to dwell on this just for a minute, then who is able to answer this question that Judge Wolf has asked? Is it the Bureau of Prisons itself as opposed to you, meaning you and your fellow lawyers, Nancy Gertner and others? Who will answer that question?
I'm not sure that there's any structure to providing a definitive answer to that, but I think the answer is no, that it wasn't. And I think that the Bureau of Prisons is going to say, no, we didn't take it. We were there to make a decision, they said, about his medical condition. And that's what the recommendation was based on. If you look at the motion they filed, nothing to do with who he is or what his stature is or how dangerous he is.
But Wolf is permitted to take into account, if he chooses, this whole issue about whether there's a disparity in treatment of similarly situated people, meaning in terms of health, who don't have the stature itself.
But there's no way to answer that question, Jim, because they haven't been releasing anyone.
I see. How's his health?
It's not good. It's not good.
What does that mean? How bad?
Well, what happened probably 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, is they finally took him out for a swallowing function test, which he's been asking for 4 years. And they realized that everything that he had been saying was in fact true, that he can't swallow, that he aspirates food into his lungs, therefore he's had pneumonia a number of times, and that he needed to be on a pureed diet. So that's been going on for 4 years. And fortunately, they did take him to an outside hospital to do that test. So I think that was very helpful in them seeing that Sal cannot function in an institutional setting.
What happens if this isn't successful? What happens if it's denied by Judge Wolf and your husband has to serve 3 more years in federal prison?
There's no way he can survive. He's lost, since they did the swallowing test, he's lost about 10 pounds, and that's on a pureed diet. He's not getting the nutrition that he needs. He's malnourished. He needs sustenance, and that's just not possible there.
John, quickly if you can, how did it happen that Carmen Ortiz and the Bureau of Prisons decided that compassionate release was right for Sal DiMasi? What was the roadmap there?
The roadmap is that the individual prisoner files an application. And, to be frank, you wonder about the degree of support. We helped Sal in framing that application and setting out the medical records. But it's taken
like any lawyers would do for anybody who filed such a thing.
Right. And, I mean, Sal is not the only prisoner that I'm helping on these kinds of issues. But the issue is it's taken us well over a year to get to the point we're at. And going up and down the line, well, this is not ready, well, we're not sure about this, back and forth with the Bureau of Prisons.
Are you optimistic about this?
I'm cautiously optimistic because these things just have not happened, so that the Bureau of Prisons' decision to make the recommendation is an enormous first step.
In itself. Before you go, for those who were, say, well, Sal DiMasi, special deal, this, last time you were here, you had just finished lobbying the State House to make sure that Massachusetts changed its laws. We're one of only 5 states in the country which under state law does not allow for compassionate release.
Yes.
What's going on with that?
Right now, there does not seem to be a lot of activity on that, and I'm hoping that I can continue to be a voice for that. It's very important to me and to a number of people. I've seen this side of suffering, and we're human beings.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. I keep plugging away, keep breathing.
I wish you luck. Deborah DiMasi, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me
John, good
here.
luck.
Jim,
Thank you. Good to see you. Appreciate it.